No.
Quiet. Go this Jack. The other way. The other way.
Ready to go? That's all right.
Oh, right, Colin's pass up the road, you reckon? Pull into
Other main street.
Right there. Doesn't say who it's from. It says. I asked for a blue one.
I was hoping to pull in there. I want to pop on that. Pull in, take it.
This is what I like. Yeah. And I just want to put a blue one chip.
Yeah.
So, even though I won't be here next year.
They all had to eat their words because I made them wait and they said, Bob, you muck this up.
Yeah, we can be 5 minutes late. 10 minutes late, 5 minutes late. Huh? Yeah, I will get them.
Call them all together.
I'll call out 10 clubs.
What he did this morning.
Yeah, I know, he told me what he did this morning.
Yeah, good.
Hey, Malcolm. Hey, up here for thinking.
Which one are you looking for? In there, bitch. Yeah, there it is. There it is. And it's not had to be there.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. We'll proceed while the sun's out. Could I ask you to please help us observe the COVID rules? If you don't know the person standing beside you, could you just move away a little bit? If you haven't booked in, I'll come and haunt you. It's a special day for us, and with great concession from people, we're allowed to do this. I don't want to muck it up. So if you haven't booked in, there's about 30 QR readers around here. The lines are sitting around the edge. Please do so before you leave. Pretty impressed with our aeroplane that flew over on time. Very well done. Today we're under the control of Vice President Peter Bruin, and officiating pastor is a new one to the town, Brenton Wilkinson, who's promised me not to bore you. That's promise. Again, I would like to thank the City of Mount Gambier Band, the pipe band across there that is getting bigger each year as the wreaths become longer to take to lay. Thank you, people. And I guess the City Council for making this area attractive for us each year. Today, obviously with the plane flying over, it's the 100th anniversary of our Air Force, and our Air Force keeps telling everybody it's the second oldest Air Force in the world. South Africa argue about that, but we're here, they're not. So we are the second oldest Air Force in the world and 100 years old. You'll notice out front today, without making a big deal, was our oldest World War II airman, Mr. Jack Hoffgood. And Jack was and I said to Jack the other day, and I'm not sure whether it went down all right, but I said, Jack, you're older than the Air Force. At 101 and a half, Jack, we salute your service. I'll now turn over to Pastor.
On this day, above all days, we recall those who did not return to receive the welcome of the nation. We remember all who still sleep where they were left, amid the holly scrub in the valleys and on the ridges of Gallipoli, on the rocky and terraced hills of Palestine, and in the lovely cemeteries of France. We remember all who lie asleep in the ground beneath the simmering haze of the desert, Tobruk, and amid the mountain passes and olive groves of Greece and Crete, and in the snow-capped hills of Syria. We remember all who lie buried in the rank jungle of New Guinea, Malaya, and in the distant islands of the Pacific. We remember all who lie amid friends in Britain and in our own far north. We remember all who lie in unknown resting places in every land, and those gallant men and women whose grave is the unending sea. Especially do we remember all who died as prisoners of war, remote from their homeland and from the comforting presence of their kith and kin. We think of those in our women's services who gave their lives in our own and foreign lands and at sea, and of those who proved to be, in much more than name, sisters of our fighting men. We recall too the staunch friends who fought beside our men on the first Anzac Day, men of New Zealand who helped create the name of Anzac. We recall those who gave their lives in the British and Commonwealth forces and of our allies, and we think of those who fell when they stood against the overwhelming might of an oppressor. We think of every man and woman who died so that the lights of freedom and humanity might continue to shine. We think of those gallant Australians who died in Korea, Malaya, Vietnam, Gulf War, Iraq, Afghanistan, and all peacekeeping missions assisting or to defend the Commonwealth and other countries of the free world against a common enemy. May all these rest proudly in the knowledge of their achievement, and may we and our successors in that heritage prove worthy of their sacrifice, lest we forget.
Mayor-Lynn. I now invite Mayor-Lynn to say a few words on behalf of the community. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. As Mayor of the City of Mount Gambier, it is an honour for me to stand here, having marched alongside the servicemen and women of our community on this Anzac Day. I acknowledge the Boandic peoples as the traditional custodians of the land where we meet today, and pay respect to elders past, present and emerging. It was an honour to march behind our city's centenarian, Jack Hoffgood, and to reflect and remember those who are no longer with us. Anzac Day is an important national day of commemoration, and I am so pleased to see you all here today. Last year, COVID-19 changed the way we observed this important occasion, and it is wonderful to see our community back together again at this memorial. As we were unable to gather together last year, many observed the occasion by standing in their driveways for the dawn service, and I'm sure that many did so again this morning. No matter where we celebrate or how we celebrate, Anzac Day is etched in our history and is part of who we are. We pause to reflect and honour the service and sacrifice of our Australian service personnel who have served our nation for over a century, and to remember more than 102,000 Australians who have died in wars, conflicts and peacekeeping operations. The COVID pandemic has prompted me to reflect even more deeply on the sacrifice that so many of our defence personnel have made to enable us to live a life of freedom and choice. The pandemic has presented us with one of our most challenging times post-World War II, but that seems inconsequential compared to the challenges presented during war times. Anzac Day is a significant day for us as Australians, as we take the time to show our gratitude for what we have and the life we live in this great country. Today, we reflect on that service and we honour the values that were invested in the original Anzacs: loyalty, selflessness, courage. Values that we continue to observe so that we may carry on the spirit of Anzac. I ask that we spare a thought also for those families who lost loved ones and those families that continue on while their husbands, wives, brothers and sisters continue to defend our country from Australia and overseas. On behalf of the City of Mount Gambier, I would like to acknowledge all servicemen and women, both past and current serving. Anzac Day is about acknowledging what they have done and what they continue to do for us and our country. We are forever in their debt and we remember and honour them every day, but in particular this Anzac Day. In closing, I would like to acknowledge the work of RSL President Bob Sandow and his members for the role they play in providing us an opportunity to participate in Anzac Day to honour those who have served our country, lest we forget.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce our guest for Anzac Day, Captain Matthew Ritchie, Royal Australian Navy, Submariner, and Captain Ritchie has been in the service since he was 16. He's trying to tell us it's only 25 years ago, but it's a while ago. He also said that if he gets his feet wet like this morning, he's in trouble, as is the vessel off Indonesia, off Bali. Today, as I said, is the 100th anniversary of the Air Force. We couldn't get an Air Force personnel, but we had a couple up in the heavens. So Captain Matthew Ritchie would just like to give a short Anzac address.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, in the pre-dawn darkness on the 25th of April 1915, the first soldiers of the Australian and New Zealand Army Corps, the 1st Anzacs, landed on the Gallipoli Peninsula. By the end of that first day, over 16,000 men had surged ashore. More than 2,000 were dead or injured. These men did not set out to be immortalised, but their conduct on that day and over subsequent months has made them legendary. Today, we honour the sacrifice of those first Anzacs and those who fought alongside them at sea and in the air, not only at Gallipoli, but throughout the Great War. We also remember the many thousands of Australian men and women who have followed their examples in other conflicts. These Australians offered themselves in the service of our nation and in the service of peace and justice. They fought on land, in the air and at sea. They endured and they suffered. Many died in the course of their service, in battle, of wounds, of disease and in captivity. And those who returned were never the same people again. Their stories are at the core of our shared identity as Australians. The stories of these servicemen and women are as wide and varied as the places they served, the conflicts they served in, and the people themselves. They are Australians from the cities and the country. They served in jungles and deserts, in string and canvas aeroplanes and submarines. They all served their country so that we could stand here today in freedom. Their stories are our stories now, and I wish to share with you one of them today, the story of ordinary seaman Edward Teddy Sheehan. On the 1st of December 2020, Teddy was posthumously awarded the Victoria Cross, 78 years to the day of his passing. In doing so, he became the first member of the Royal Australian Navy to be awarded Australia's highest honour for valour. It is appropriate that on this day we recommend his self-sacrifice. On the 1st of December 1942, Teddy was serving in the warship HMAS Armidale, which was operating off Timor to Australia's north, when they were attacked by no less than 13 enemy aircraft. The little corvette manoeuvred frantically and fired at the enemy, but was struck multiple times by torpedoes and by bombs. HMAS Armidale was heavily damaged, and as she listed heavily to port, the order was given to abandon ship. The survivors leapt into the sea, where they were machine gunned in the water by the attacking aircraft. Once he had helped to free a life raft, Teddy, already wounded in the chest and back, crawled back to his gun and strapped himself in. He kept firing as the ship sank beneath him. He shot down one aircraft and kept others away from his mates in the water. He was still firing his gun as Armidale slipped below the waves, dragging him down. Only 49 of the 149 men who had been on board survived the sinking and the ensuing days in life rafts. Many of these men credited their lives to Sheehan, one man who did all that was possible to save his shipmates. Teddy Sheehan was 18 years old. Within today's Defence Force, Teddy's spirit and sacrifice is captured in our shared values of service, courage, respect, integrity and excellence. But Teddy's heroism is a shining example to all of Australians today. Together, we are all proud of that brave young man, the recent recognition of his valour and his selfless service for others. Teddy's service and that of many thousands of others across the Navy, Army and Air Force continue to echo today as we serve our nation in both war and peace. The past 2 years have seen some of the largest scale defence support operations here at home. Through 2020 and 21, many members of the Defence Force have supported Australian citizens in distress. They have helped those affected by bushfires, storms and floods, and contributed significantly in every state and territory to the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. In doing so, many Defence families have been disrupted and separated in a great time of stress and uncertainty, and we acknowledge and thank them for their support. But that support has not stopped at our shores. Abroad, the Australian Defence Force has continued to support others and demonstrate both the Anzac spirit and our Australian values. Our Defence Force deployed people to help our near neighbours in Fiji over Christmas in the aftermath of Cyclone Yaza, and in support missions to Papua New Guinea and Timor-Leste. Further afield, the Australian Defence Force continues to deploy and represent our country throughout Asia and the Middle East. But today, we do not glorify war. We hope for peace. Today, we show our respect for service and we reflect on those qualities which make us better as individuals and greater together as a nation. Today, we are thankful that Australians have fought for peace and justice for over 100 years. Their endeavours in difficult times have delivered us to a society where we're able to speak freely, to share opinions and discuss issues openly, the sort of society where no one is held in contempt or viewed as lesser on account of gender, race, belief or other differences. We honour those who served in order that we can enjoy the fruits of democracy. We honour their service and most specifically, we remember the 102,866 people who have lost their lives in the service of our country. Their names on the Australian War Memorial Roll of Honour keep watch over the memorial's pool of reflection and over the eternal flame. The significance of their sacrifice is captured in some way in the verse of John Maxwell Edmonds. When you go home, tell them of us and say, for your tomorrow we gave our today. Lest we forget.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll commence with the wreath laying. RSL President Mr Bob Sando and RSL Women's Auxiliary. Federal Member for Barker, Tony Passon. Member for Mount Gambier, Troy Bell. Her Worship Lynette Martin, and His Worship the Mayor Council Richard Sage. Serving ADF personnel, Captain Matthew Ritchie. South Australian Police. Ex-POWs and Korean veterans. Vietnam veterans in honour of Rogers, Steen and Casadeo. Women's Veterans Network Australia. National Malaya, Borneo and Timor Veterans Association, South Australia Incorporated. Royal South Australian Regiment, 10th 27 Battalion. Naval Association. National Servicemen's Association. And the Royal South Australian Regiment Association. Red Cross Mount Gambier Service Group. Metropolitan Fire Service. Mount Gambier Country Fire Service. Mount Gambier District State Emergency Service. St John Ambulance SA Limestone Coast Division. St John's Ambulance South Australia Mount Gambier Cadet Division.
The War Widows. Mount Gambier City Band. '48 ACU Australian Army Cadets. '612 Squadron Australian Air Force Cadets. Mount Gambier Veteran and Vintage Car Club. First Mount Gambier Scout Group. St Martin's Lutheran College. Grant High School. Woodlands Grove. Retirement Village. Melaleuca Primary School. Tennyson College. And Legacy SA. Are there any other societies, organisations or members of the public who wish to lay a wreath? Please do so now. Those gentlemen who are not in uniform, please remove your hat or headdress. After which there will be a minute's silence, followed by the Ode to the Fallen by RSL President Bob Stando. Stand fast.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. Lest we forget.
The band will now play God Save the Queen, followed by our national anthem. And if you wish to join in our national anthem, we would invite you to do so. Thank you. I thought about the values of Anzac. Yes, you may be seated if you wish to be seated. Courage, mateship, fairness, persistence, a selfless spirit, faithful unto death, if necessary. And my brief time with you, I would like to share on the last issue specifically. May 13, 1943, probably doesn't mean a lot to too many of you here today. That day, the Australian hospital ship Centaur left Brisbane bound for Lae, Goroka and places in New Guinea. As she sailed beyond Stradbroke Island, about 30 miles or so off the coast, on the morning of May 14, at 4 a.m, the watch for the day, or for that period, went back to his cabin. About 10 minutes later, there was a deafening roar. The hospital ship had been torpedoed by a Japanese submarine, I-177. Unfortunately, the hit was about 2 metres below the waterline, and it hit exactly where the oil tanks were, so that the ship literally exploded. Anybody below deck would have been killed instantly. There were 332 people on that vessel. 12 of them were nurses, and there were many other medical people on there as well, and one of them was an uncle of mine who tragically perished in this disaster. I would like to share with you Sister Ellen Savage, a young nurse, the only one of the 12 to survive. The Centaur sank in 3 minutes. Now, you don't have a lot of time, Bob, to do anything in 3 minutes. To get out of your cabin when a ship's on fire, the ship went down bow first, and it went down virtually with no noise at all. And nearly all of the people on board lost their lives. Sister Ellen had managed to get on a life jacket in those 3 minutes and jump off of the ship, but she was sucked down by the whirlpool of the ship going down. And when she bobbed to the surface, she says later on, I thought I would never make it. I thought I'd never come up. I was covered in oil. I had my nightwear on. She had 3 broken ribs, a fractured jaw, burst eardrums, and a couple of other injuries as well as extensive bruising. And eventually she managed to find her way onto what was left of the wheelhouse of the Centaur, which was floating nearby, and some of the survivors of that sinking had managed to make their way there. Whilst on there with all of her injuries that she had suffered, she was ministering to others. She handed out bread and water, in other words, what little supplies they managed to get off the ship for themselves. She led in prayer. And when one of the people sitting alongside her who was so badly burned died, they recited the Lord's Prayer and took care of the body appropriately. Sister Ellen came back to Australia. She is only the 2nd female to be awarded the George Cross Medal at that point in her life. Ironically, she died on Anzac Day, 1985, having attended a service just like we are attending today. When I think of the sacrifice of people during the war, going back to the First World War and beyond, I am reminded of the fact that they were willing to go not knowing the outcome. When they left these shores and went to Gallipoli, they did not know what the outcome would be. I have had the privilege personally of going to Gallipoli, and I've had the privilege of talking to the Turkish guides who have shared their side of the story. We as Australians know all about the Anzac side of the story, but I wanted to hear from the Turks themselves their side of the story. And it was humbling and quite an experience to hear them talk about what it was like for them. Sister Ellen eventually had something set up in her name, I believe a nursing home or some sort of feature in New South Wales, and she gave her life for others. There is a text in the Bible that says, John 15:13 says, greater love has no man or woman than that they lay down their life for their friends. And as I think about that, I think about the fact that Jesus Christ came down to this earth knowing the outcome of the war zone that he was entering. Those of you who have served in war, those of you who have watched it on TV or whatever, you have a certain view of it, but when you're actually in it, it's an entirely different matter altogether. You are never totally certain of the outcome. But when Christ came down to this earth to die for us, he knew the outcome before he left heaven. He knew that his sacrifice would be a sacrifice that would bring many, many people to be saved in the kingdom of heaven. That's the greatest sacrifice of all. The spirit of Anzac is something that we must keep alive. My dear friends, we live in a world that is a very self-involved society. I think we need to really think through the values that we as a society hold. I believe the important values are not only mateship, they're selflessness, being willing to put yourself out to help others. I don't mean just do the mundane things. I'm talking about doing the things that take you out of your comfort zone. They're the things that would help to make our society here in Mount Gambier and other places the kind of place where you would say, I'm proud to live in Mount Gambier. These people are so caring, they're so generous, and they're so helpful. That's the challenge I want to leave with you today. I want to leave the challenge of greater love for woman has no man than to lay down their life for their friends. Are you willing to accept the Anzac challenge? Are you willing to accept the Anzac principles and apply them to your life as you leave here today and go into the next week? Let's just bow our heads in prayer. Father, we remember those who gave their lives for us, whether they were at Gallipoli, World War II, in the jungles of Malaya, New Guinea, Borneo, other places. We remember that they went, Lord. Some of them were young. What we sometimes forget is that the people who died on the Centaur, Sister Ellen was only 22 years of age or so at that stage. And she gave her life willingly to help those around about her, and miraculously she was saved. But Lord, help us today as we remember those who gave their lives that our country might be free. May we apply those principles that we have talked about, that we have heard about. May those principles become our personal principles in order that our society may be a kind of place where people are pleased and glad to live, where they feel safe, where they feel secure. We thank you for your wonderful gift of Jesus, and we commit this Anzac Day service into your care today in Jesus' name. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, the catafalque party will dismount and move towards the main gates. Please give them room to do this. The girl guides and the cadets will move around and collect the service sheets, or either that or place them here on the dais. I thank you for your attendance here today. On behalf of the Mount Gambier Community RSL, please accept our thanks for your continuing support. Being the oldest RSL club in South Australia, now soon to be 104 years, we aim to be here for a long time yet. Please accept our thanks, City Band, Highland Pipe Band, Choral Society Singers, the City of Mount Gambier, gardeners and our veterans. Now I'd like to cordially invite you to join us at the Community RSL for refreshments, lunch and traditional activities. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.